in the body. So finally I quote the quote of Louis Pasteur, and he said that when I approach a child or a student, he inspires in me two sentiments. One, tenderness for what he is, and respect for what he may become. So here I end my discussion of Louis Pasteur and pass on my discussion to my colleague. Now before I pass on my discussion to my colleague, I would like to tell my dear students that hard work always pays, and it pays in one way or the other. We may not acquire the fame of Louis Pasteur, but we can develop the science of microbiology to new frontiers, to new era. And with this, I pass on my discussion to my colleague, Jimish.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving us the very detailed idea regarding the Louis Pasteur. And these are the two scientists who made great contributions in the development of field of microbiology. So here now I am taking the chance to explain the another great scientist, Robert Koch, who also in the same time or during the same period almost, where Pasteur was doing some of the experiments in the one corner of the world, in the Germany, another scientist which is having the same importance or also doing the great work in the field of microbiology to develop microbiology was Robert Koch. The lifespan, as you can see in the figure, this is the photo of Robert Koch, and his lifespan was in between the year 1843 to 1910. This was the short tenure, but he did the great works. The key events which actually the Robert Koch contributes for the microbiology. The first key discovery was in the year 1876. He discovered the microbe that caused a very fatal disease which is known as the anthrax. After 2 years of this discovery, he again discovered the microbes that were responsible to cause wounds to go septic. As in the previous discussion, in the last topic, the word septicemia was used. Also, some year later, in the year 1882, he identified the microbe that caused tuberculosis. All of we are well aware of this, and also we will go in the detailed discussion of this also. The another important discovery was the identification of the germ that also caused cholera. Pasteur had also worked on the cholera, and at the same time in the different region of the world, Robert Koch also worked on the same disease. In the year 1891, the German government set up the Institute for Infectious Diseases in Berlin, and that was under the supervision of Robert Koch. And ultimately, the highest honor in the field of science is the Nobel Prize, or in the any field. In year 1905, he obtained this honor. Now, we'll discuss some of all the history and the journey of Robert Koch throughout the development of microbiology. First, we'll see some of his personal history. He was born on December 11, 1843 at the town Kloster, and it is located in the Upper Harz mountains in the country Germany. So he was basically a German. He was the son of a mining engineer, and from the childhood, intelligence and methodical persistence were the characteristics of him. He took his schooling, or he attended the local high school which was called gymnasium, and there showed an interest in biology. He was from the childhood very much interested in the field of biology, and like his father, he also liked to travel throughout the world. For the higher studies, in 1866, he went to the University of Göttingen to study medicine. Here, the professor of anatomy was Jacob Hänel, and Koch was no doubt influenced by Hänel's view that And what was the view was that infectious diseases were caused by living parasitic organisms, but there were no such what we can say the evidences were there that the disease are caused by these parasitic organisms, or people are not capable of identifying them, purifying them. So Robert Koch decided to work on this topic. So after taking his MD degree in medicine in year 1866, Koch went to the Berlin for 6 months of chemical study. So after medicinal study, he also got the chemical study, and there he also came under the influence of great scientist Virchow. Ultimately, at the end of his educational journey, he joined the profession. In 1867, he settled after a period as assistant in the general hospital at Hamburg, in the general practice, first at Langenhagen, and soon after in 1869 at Rackwitz in the province of Posen. Here he also gave another examination to improve himself in the medical field. So he passed the exam of medical officer's examination, and in 1870 he volunteered for service in the Franco-Prussian War, and from 1872 to 1880 he became the district medical officer for Wollstein. It was here that he carried out the epoch-making researches which placed him at one step in the front rank of scientific workers. So this up to this time he just developed himself, he made qualified himself, and he start doing the work in the field of medicine. So first, the Robert Koch, he first worked on the disease which was very prevalent and very dangerous disease at that time, and there was no treatment of the disease, and that disease was anthrax. So it was very much spreaded among the farm animals in the Wollstein district where he joined the profession. And so at that time there were no enough facilities available, and still also he totally or entirely cut off from the libraries where he can read the books or references regarding this disease, or he was not even able to contact the other scientists or scientific workers. So even in such harsh conditions, due to the demands and his credit or his knowledge, so people demands made on him by his busy practice on study of this disease, and give some of the treatments or some of the cure regarding this disease. He was consulted. If we talk about his laboratory, so actually it was not a laboratory, but it was just the 4-roomed flat, and that was his home. And what were his equipments? So apart from the microscope given to him, a simple microscope, compound microscope to him by his wife, he provided for himself. So this conditions are actually the inspiration for today's people. Even he proved that without the help of sophisticated instruments, with the help of simple instruments, if you are very keen or if you give efforts in a particular field, then you can make great discoveries without the help of facilities. So he gives some of the ideas regarding the anthrax. Anthrax bacillus had been earlier discovered by different scientists like Pollander, Reyer and Devine, but Koch set himself to prove scientifically that this bacillus is in fact the cause of disease. The earlier people have discussed, or they have given some of the evidences that there might be the presence of bacilli to cause the disease anthrax, but they were not able to prove. But Koch did this, and he gave some of the proofs that the same bacilli or the anthrax bacilli, or today which we call the bacillus anthracis, is actually responsible to cause this anthrax. So he did an experiment to prove this. He inoculated a mice by means of homemade slivers of food with anthrax bacilli taken from the spleens of farm animals that had been died of anthrax. Means he took the samples from the animals which were died of anthrax, and then he injected this into the mice and found that these mice were all killed by the bacilli. He also did another batch, and in that batch he inoculated the same mice with the blood, but this blood was from the healthy animals, means the animals which were free from anthrax. And what he found, that these animals remained healthy, means they did not suffer from the disease. So now it was clear then when he injected the blood taken from the diseased animals, then the mice were died. But if he injected the same types of mice with the diseased free blood, then they remained healthy or free from diseases. So this confirmed the work of others who had shown that the disease can be transmitted by means of blood of animals suffering from anthrax. But even still, this did not satisfy Koch. He also wanted to know whether anthrax bacilli that had never been in contact with any kind of animal could cause the disease or not. Means even the bacilli cannot come in the contact with animal if it is free, means in the pure culture, and whether still it is capable of doing the disease or not. To solve this problem, he obtained the pure cultures of the bacilli by growing them on the aqueous humors of the ox eyes. At that time, actually, the Robert Koch, we can say, he was the pioneer of obtaining the techniques of pure culture, and he himself, after experimenting various ways, he developed to obtain pure cultures. By studying or drawing and photographing these cultures, means he draws the figures, structures of the bacterium, and Koch recorded the multiplication of the bacilli. So in the culture, whatever the culture he was used, he found the increase in the number of bacterium. So he concluded that even in the pure culture, if some of the nutrients or artificial media can be provided to the bacterium, then they are capable of multiplying. And he recorded all this by giving the photographs or images. He also concluded one fact, that this bacilli can form spores, a structure which is known as the resistant. Now we all know the spores are the dormant resistant structures. So that were first observed in the bacilli by Robert Koch. Means when the conditions are unfavorable to them, they produce inside rounded spores, and he first observed this in the bacilli by Robert Koch. Also, spores can resist adverse condition, especially if we are talking about the bacilli, then the lack of oxygen it can easily resist, and when once again the suitable conditions of life are restored, the spores give rise to bacilli again. So first time they observed the spore form of the bacterium as well as the vegetative form of the bacilli. So Koch grew such type of bacilli for several generations in these pure cultures, means without using any laboratory animals or experimental animals. He just grow them in the artificial media, and although they had no contact with any kind of animal, when they were injected into the healthy mice or some experimental animals, they were still able to cause anthrax in that particular experimental animals. So the problem which was given to the Robert Koch, that whether even without the contact with animals, microorganisms in pure form, whether they are capable of causing anthrax or not, he solved by doing this work. Then results of this work was demonstrated by Koch to various other scientists. Whatever the results he obtained after this observation, he observed it to the Ferdinand Cohen, who was the professor of botany at the University of Breslau, or who called a meeting of his colleagues, means the various scientists or the professors which were working there, to witness this demonstration among the public, means among whom one of the important scientists, Professor Cohen, or who was the professor of pathological anatomy. So in the presence of both Cohn and Cohen and other colleagues, he carried out that demonstration, and they were deeply impressed by Koch's work. And when Cohn in 1876 published Koch's work in the botanical journal, whatever the observation results, as we have discussed just earlier, all these results were published in the journal, and this was the time when Koch became very famous amongst the scientists at that time. After this, he continued to work at Wollstein, as we have discussed earlier. He was the medical officer there. He further worked for 4 years, and during this period he improved himself in the methods of fixing, staining and photographing bacteria. So this was the another important discovery. He developed the techniques of how to fix the bacteria, how to stain the bacteria, and how to observe and draw the bacteria, so we can get exact idea of the structure and the multiplication system or the size of the bacterium. He also did the important work on the study of disease caused by bacterial infections of wounds, and he also published his results in the journal in the year 1878. Also, this work provided he had done with the anthrax a practical and